All right, so functions day 3 warm-up. You should already have this finished. If not, go ahead and pause this so that you can finish working those out. And then we'll review, so this will help us get ready for the quiz that you have coming up. So on these, we did function, notation, and composition of functions. So on all of these, we want f of x to equal 4x, and then g of x equals 2x squared plus 1. So find each of the following, show your work, write your final answer on the line, provided that you don't have a line. But that's what it's going to say on the quiz. But you actually don't have that for this part. Okay. But there will be a line for the quiz to put your final answer after you've done your work. Okay, so here we put 4x is what f of x represents, minus g of x, which is 2x squared plus 1. So remember, we want to, whenever we plug them in, we want to put in parentheses because we may need to distribute, or when we multiply, we may have to FOIL or something like that. Okay. So then we do have a minus sign, so that's like a -1. So remember, we do have to distribute that. So 4x minus 2x squared minus 1. We always want to put our answers in standard form. So remember, from Algebra 1, that means we put the highest degree term first. So -2x squared goes first. Then 4x is plus 4x because it's a positive 4x. And then minus 1. So this is what you would write on your final answer line, because we've combined all like terms, which there were none, and we put it in standard form. Highest degree first, then next, then down to the one without a variable. Okay. Now remember, this is a composition, so I like to rewrite these. So this is actually f of g of 5. So what this means is we have to figure out what g of 5 is, and then whatever that number is, because when they give you a number for x, it's going to come out to be a number answer. Then you plug that in for f. So let's do g of 5 first. So remember, that notation is we look at the g of x1, and wherever we see an x, we plug in 5. So then that's going to be 2 times 5 squared, which is 25, plus 1. So that'd be 50 plus 1, so that's 50. Okay, so that's what g of 5 is. Now we're going to take out the g of 5, and what it is 51, so we're going to find f of 51. So that's what that means to do that composition. So then that's going to be 4 times x, which is 51, which is going to be 204. So that's the final answer you would write on your answer line. Okay, so that's a composition when you have the open circle like that. Now notice here we have the filled in circle, the dot, so this is multiplication. Okay, so this number 3 is not, when it just has the dot like that, it's multiplication. Here with the open circle, that's your composition. Okay, all right, so g of x was 2x squared plus 1 times f of x in parentheses, which would be 4x. So this is a distribute. So I'm going to distribute that to both. So you should have gotten 8x to the third power plus 4x. And that's already in standard form, and there's no like terms to combine. So 4x to the first times 2x squared is 8x to the third. Remember, when you're multiplying x squared times x to the first, you add the exponents. Okay. All right, on this one, g of -3, which means you should have plugged in -3 for x in the g function. So 2 times -3 squared plus 1. So order of operations, so we do the exponents. So -3 squared is 9. So 2 times 9 plus 1. So that's 18 plus 1. So then your final answer is 19. So 19 is what you would write on your final answer line. Okay. Now on this last one, number 5, this up here, is where we're doing a composition like we did on number 2, but we don't have a number to plug in for x. So what this says is that I'm going to plug in the function g of x into the f function. Okay, so what we end up with is, actually, I'm going to put it over here so I have more room. So this is number 5. So we're doing f, and then the g of x is the 2x squared plus 1. So that means now wherever I see an x value in the f function, we're going to plug in all of this that's in parentheses. So remember, f of x is 4 times x, so I do 4 times this whole thing, 2x squared plus 1. And then now I just have to distribute that 4. So what that equals is 8x squared plus 4. This is already in standard form, so that's your answer for f of g of x. So when there's just an x here, your final answer is not going to be a single number. So notice on number 3 also there were just x's in there, there were no numbers, and so you had the x's left over. Like number 1 also, there are x's here, so you have x's in your answer. Whereas like number 2 and number 4, when there's not an x, you're plugging in a number for the x variables, then you're going to get a number answer back, a single number that you're going to put in on the answer line. Okay, so each of these on the quiz, there'll be 3 of these on the quiz. So make sure that you're showing your work, however you're finding it, and then write your final answer on the line that's provided. Okay. All right, next I want to look at your functions day 3 worksheet, and I'll go over a couple problems that I think maybe you might have had questions on, since I can't actually ask you what questions you have like I normally do. I'll go over a couple that I think that you might have had questions on. Okay. All right, so now looking at your worksheet, like I said, I'm going to go over a couple I think you might have a question on. If I cover one that you don't have a question on, that's okay. You can look at the answer key and kind of try and work your way backwards on that, but I'll try and hit the ones that I think where you might have had some algebra issues, or like with these story problems, just making sure that you're setting them up correctly. Okay. So a boutique prices merchandise by adding 80% to its costs. It later decreases by 25% the price of the items that don't sell quickly. What would the price tag be on an item that originally cost the boutique $150 but is now on sale? Okay, so it cost the boutique $150. Okay. But they always mark it up and they add 80% of the cost. So then what we're going to do is, remember back when you guys did this in Algebra 1, you have to change this percent into a decimal, which means you move the decimal place 2 places to the right. So this will be 0.80. Okay, so you're going to multiply that out. I'm actually going to get my calc here. All right, so we're going to do 150 times 0.8, which should give you 120, or I'm sorry, what was it? Yeah. Okay, so that means they're bumping this up from 150 to 120, or I'm sorry, adding 120 to it. So they add 80% of the price to their cost. So we figured out what 80% of this 150 was, which is $120, and then we add those to get 270. So what the store is going to sell it for when after they mark it up is $270. I know that seems like it's huge, but that's how stores make their profit. Okay, is they mark it up a certain percent. So whatever they get it for from the manufacturer, so they got the $150 price from the manufacturer, and then to make their own profit, they bump it up a certain percent. So we figured out what 80% of that was, which is 120, and then you add that to their cost. So they're selling it for $270. Well, then this problem says that they decrease it by 25% if it doesn't sell. So they're saying, what is it now that it's on sale? So assuming that it didn't get sold. Okay, you've got a couple different ways you can do this. You could take the 270, multiply it by 0.25, figure out how much money that is, and then subtract that from the 270. Or since we know we're taking off 25%, if you do 100% minus 25%, you get 85%. Nope, sorry, 75%. Okay, so you're actually paying 75% of this $270. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 270 and times it by the 0.75, where I take that 75% and change it into a decimal. Okay, so 270 times 0.75, that gives me $202.50. So this is how much it is when it's on sale. Okay. You can't take this 25% and subtract it from that 80% because it's not the same thing. Okay, and then multiply by that. So they marked it up and it got marked up to 270, and then you times it by the 0.75, and how I got that was 100% minus the 25% because it's 25% off. And so that leaves 75%. So you're actually paying 75% of the price. So this gets you to the answer quickly. But like I said, you could have done, if you would have done 270 times 0.25, you would have gotten an answer. And then if you took that answer and subtracted that from 270, you would have gotten this 202.50. So there's more than one way to approach a lot of these problems. Okay? So the box answer there is the answer after they marked it up 80% and got 270, and then it's on sale for 25% off. I feel like 2 through those are okay. Just to make sure you understood 7 and 8 here. So you're doing whatever the f of -2 value is, and then you're adding it to 4 times whatever the g of 0 value is. So if you find f of -2 first, so f is 4 times x, so it'd be 4 times -2 minus 1. So that gives you -8 minus 1, which is -9. So this value is now -9 plus, then we do 4 times whatever g of 0 comes out to be. So if I do g of 0, I plug in 0 into the g of x function, so that's 2 times 0 squared plus 3. So that would be 0 squared is 0 times 2 is 0 plus 3, so that equals 3. So g of 0 is 3. So then you do -9 plus 12, which gives you 3 as a final answer. Okay, so that's what they're talking about here. So this is 2 times whatever you get when you do f of 3 plus 4 to that. Okay. These are just practicing your compositions. So for this one, you figure out what the k of 2 is, then take that number, because you're good at number answer for that one since you're plugging in a number for x, and then take j of whatever that number is. And so that's on the answer key there. One of the ones that I want to make sure I go over was this h of x, this number 14. Because this one gets a little bit labor intensive because it's using a lot of your algebra skills. So I would be doing k of, and then h of x was -3x plus 2. Okay, so we're taking h of x, which is the -3x plus 2, and plugging that into the k function. So then what that looks like is right here, we're going to plug that in. So in parentheses, I have -3x plus 2 in parentheses squared, that's your x squared, plus 3 times -3x plus 2, that's the 3 times x, and then minus 2. You have to remember this -3x negative 3x plus 2 squared does not mean you just distribute that square and you get 9x squared plus 4. That's not how that works. This squared means that you have negative 3x plus 2 times negative 3x plus 2. So we FOIL that out. I'm going to go ahead and distribute this. So that gives me minus 9x plus 6. And then I have that minus 2 at the end. Okay. So here I'm going to FOIL this out and write it in blue. So negative 3x times negative 3x is 9x squared. Negative 3x times 2 is negative 6x. 2 times negative 3x is negative 6x. And then positive 2 times positive 2 is plus 4. Then the rest of this stays the same, so it's still minus 9x. And I'm going to go ahead and combine these because those are like terms. So 6 minus 2 is positive 4. Okay, now we're going to combine like terms. So I've got a negative 6x, a negative 6x, and a negative 9x. So 9x squared stays the same. Then I'll put in green what I get for this. So that's negative 12 minus 9 should be negative 21. So you're actually adding all of those numbers. And then I have a positive 4 and a positive 4 here. So adding those like terms would give you plus 8. That should be your final answer. Hopefully that's what I had on my answer key. I don't have my answer key in front of me. Okay, but just remember that if you have a binomial in here and it's raised to the second power, that you're actually FOILing that out. Okay. And then the last ones I wanted to talk about were 15 and 16. So making sure that you're understanding these, because this really is where you kind of, when you're doing a couple of different functions, that's your composition function, where you're applying a gift card and a discount, or you're figuring tax and then you're also trying to do tip. Those, those are compositions of each other. So Mr. Levinson went to Kohl's to make a purchase. He had a $50 gift card from his birthday and a 20% off coupon for his entire purchase. How much would he actually pay, not including tax, on a purchase of $200? So really, you just have, this is kind of one of those real life situations. If you go to a store, what are they going to apply first? Are they going to apply the gift card to your total first, or are they going to do the discount first? Well, what they're actually going to do is they're going to apply that discount first, and then you pay with your gift card. Okay, so then he made a $200 purchase, and it says it's 20% off. So what I could do then is do 100% minus 20%, which means I'm going to pay 80% of that cost. So then I'm just going to get there quickly and just do 200 times 0.80. Because I know I'm only paying 80% of the price because it's 20% off. Okay, so 200 times 0.8 means that I'm paying 160. That's how much my items will cost. Now, if you wanted to do, so you could have done, instead of doing that, you could have done 280 times, or I'm sorry, 200 times 0.2, that's the 20%, and figured out what that number is. And then you take 200 minus, because you're taking off that. So it'd be 200 minus that number would give you the total cost, which is what we just got, which was 160. Okay, so you could have done that too, and you still would have ended up with 160 in the end here in the circle if you did those computations. Okay, but you can get there faster if you take the percent off and subtract it from 100. All right, so we've got our 160. And then we would apply, so they said we're doing this not including tax. So let's say it's one of the tax-free days. Okay, so you get the 20% off, and then we're paying with a gift card. So subtract off that $50, that gives you 110. So then he would actually have to pay out of pocket $110. Okay, so these are kind of on the EOC, you would have to know which of these comes first, just in natural order. When you go to buy things, you take off the percent and then you apply your gift card, because your gift card is part of how you pay it. All right, on the last one, when you go to a nice restaurant, you have to include tax and tip on your purchase price. If you ordered dinner for two that costs $100, what would the final price actually be? Assume a tip of 18% and a tax of 8%. So when they give you your ticket, so again, you got to kind of think on how they do this. They apply the tip first, and then you decide how much tip you're going to give. Sometimes they'll, if it's a big party, you know, they already do the tip on it. But even when they do the tip on it, they always figure out the total amount with tax first, and then they do the tip based on that. Okay, so again, another composition, which one's first and second? Okay, so we know we're going to do $100 times tax. So let's do tax first. So 0.08 is 8%. So then if you do 100 times 0.08, you get $8. So you're paying $8 in tax. So I'm going to do 100 plus that $8. So your total ticket with all your food and drinks and things like that are $108. Okay. Oh, that's terrible. Now we're going to take that 108 and apply the tip. So you can do 108 times 0.18. That's $19.44 tip. And so that means the person's going to end up paying 108 plus the $19.44. So that gives you 127.44. That's your total. That's your total price with tip, or with the tax added, and then your tip added onto that. Okay. Another way you could have done this, if you would have done 100 times 1.08, you would have gotten to this 108 faster. Because with the 1 means we take all of that $100 and then we're adding the 0.08 to it right away. Same here. If you would have done 108 times 1.18, you would have gotten to the 127 faster. Okay. Now, if you did it the way I did it, it's a little longer, but that's okay because you still get the right answer that way. Okay, so you do whichever way makes sense to you. Okay. Now, on your quiz, you won't have any of these story problem ones, but I can't say that for the test. You may have one, you will have one actually on your test next week, okay? But your quiz is going to be over the computation parts, like you did on 2 through 14. Okay, so being able to do those, and like also like we did on the warm-up. Okay, all right, so go ahead and put all of this away. I will be able to check it remotely on OneNote, and those of you that decide you want to try and do, you want to print these out on your own and do them on paper and pencil, then if I don't see it in your OneNote notebook, I'll be looking for a hard copy for you, okay, when I come back. All right, so clear off your desk, have a pencil and a calculator out, get your dividers, and you will now get the quiz for functions day 3.